hand over to our moderator, Aziz, who's going to keep us all right and hopefully help foster an interesting conversation.
Thanks so much, Rachel. I think that we have to, thanks for outstanding presentation about mapping of cultural industries in Central Asia. What is missing is probably one of the remarks that Nesta research agency from UK was mentioning is that there's still kind of large pie of informal economy that's not yet classified or estimated. And I believe that this kind of informal economy is something, or creative industry is something that unites us. And specifically, music industry and songs should be kind of also mentioned. We'll probably know that, for example, thanks to technologies, internet, there are lots of new artists that are very famous not only in their own countries but across the region. Like if somebody will start speaking like Astana'da joksың, Almaty'da joksың, Bishkek'te da joksың da. These are kind of famous song that is known across the region. Or if you go to any wedding ceremony in Kyrgyzstan, and there's going to be a break session for dances, there's going to be a mix of all songs from Central Asia, starting from Uzbek motifs, Tajik motifs, going to Kyrgyz and Kazakh Kara Jorgo dances, and so on and so forth. So I think that in the future mapping in creative industries, all those industries should be also mentioned and presented here also in discussions. So thank you very much for Andy for this presentation. And regarding game industry, it's really good to know, according to some research, development of game industries is important for birth of unicorns in the ecosystem. And all the famous unicorns are born in the cities where game industry started developing. And I hope that this kind of initiatives across the Central Asian region might be a reason and cause for the development of unicorns in the region. And thanks Dan for customer centricity. I really like his customer centricity. He launched his second co-working space just next door to my apartment. And when I moved to a new apartment, he opened in a month's next co-working space. So this is a great example of customer centricity. It helps me a lot to save my time and energy. And my congratulations to Narhos. You just recently recruited our famous rector from Kyrgyzstan, American University, Central Asia, Andrew Wachtel. And he is now kind of will help Narhos to develop its creative industries and university itself. So based on it, I would like to present a wonderful group of speakers to discuss role of like new culture, new economy, and the role of hubs and organizations in developing of creative industries. And probably we'll start just by intro in terms of how does your organization contribute to flourishing of entrepreneurship in creative industries, starting with Pamela Maccormick. Right.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me here today. I run a company called Urban Development, which is a music talent development organization in East London. We provide a bridge between education and the music industry. We care passionately about cultural democracy. When the company was set up in the late 90s, hip-hop culture was already 25 years old, so it was already constituted as heritage. So we believe in grassroots, new music, youth culture, and that it deserves the same level of support and development as traditionally Western classical traditions. We work primarily with disadvantaged, non-white, working class young people and try and connect them with the music industry towards employment. We've designed a sort of vertically integrated progression model which starts in school, goes through to higher education partnerships, and then connection with the market. In order to be able to do that, we've flexed across a number of different partnerships and financial models. So we've designed a social enterprise ecosystem which works with schools, music education hubs in London and the UK, has a subcontract with a higher education provider and has a commercial relationship with the music industry. So we have a charity that delivers the education work, and we have a commercial business that delivers the music to market through publishing and recordings.
Rachel?
Thank you. Sorry, I was just making ferocious notes there on what you were saying, Pamela. It was brilliant. So I'm Reychel Brown, and I lead an organisation called Cultural Enterprise Office, and we are dedicated business support for the creative industries. We're quite a unique office. There isn't really many organisations like ours, insofar as we look at the creative and the business aspects of everything that's been talked about earlier on today. So we support small, medium enterprises to flourish economically, socially, creatively, culturally and environmentally. And we work primarily in Scotland. We see a whole range of different organisations, and just to pick up on some of the areas that were spoken about earlier on today, one of the things that we are seeing a growing trend of are not businesses that want to have a big economic impact as unicorns, but the collaborative businesses that have been described earlier on. So what would it look like if you had 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 small, medium enterprises that were cash rich and had good talent and could offer good opportunities versus one big unicorn, one big billion-dollar company. And what's interesting is the relationship between the policy drivers and the marketplace. So the entrepreneurs in the marketplace would love to see 1,000 small, creative, interesting, hyperactive businesses. And the policymakers often want to see, just a generalisation, but often want to see one big billion-dollar company. And actually, we would argue that more jobs, more prosperity and more impact are created in nurturing that small, vibrant ecosystem rather than creating the conditions for one big player. And I think that's a trend that you're going to start seeing, because in Central Asia, there is a real drive and a real force for this kind of activity, especially in the creative and digital space, to become part of the industry and take over some of the traditional industries. I think it would be really interesting to miss out the big bit about the unicorns, don't get too obsessed with that, and jump to nurturing the small and the vibrant and the interesting spaces so that it could permeate across the whole region, and you would see a whole range of collaboration and co-working that would be quite transformational. So that's what I'm passionate about, that's what I do on a daily basis, and also I just want to point out that this is quite an extraordinary room, so I'm looking forward to learning from each other, and I'm looking forward to sharing more stories. It's been fascinating so far, and I only arrived at lunchtime.
Thanks so much. Timur, Kamalov, right?
Yes, right. Thank you. Did this work? No? I'm Timur Kamalov. I represent the Art and Culture Development Foundation under the Ministry of Culture of Uzbekistan. One of the main idea of the foundation is to create this ecosystem that the previous speaker were talking about, so that everyone, all the stakeholders are involved, and the atmosphere is friendly enough to work within the sector. Because culture, I'm not sure how it works in other countries, but in most of the Central Asian countries, culture is not considered to be a priority sector, unfortunately. It's not as important as healthcare for the policymakers or military sector, whatever. So the idea is to bring the culture sector to the table, so that policymakers and actually the people would see this sector as a potential place of work for the future, because that's the important point. We don't have enough workplaces, etc., in the sector. So one of the main ideas for us is to create this kind of atmosphere within the country. And we have different programs. I won't go into all sorts of details, but we have educational programs, the infrastructure program for the whole republic, for the whole country actually. So there are lots of programs that are dedicated for this main goal. Thank you very much.
My name is Amirkhan. Actually, I work for a real estate company. My job is a kind of like chief digital officer. One of the biggest projects is a SmArt.Point office space, SmArt.Point hub. It's now around 12,000 square meters of space. It's a co-working space, event zones. Around 45 companies, tech companies located in our space in SmArt.Point in Almaty, with a total revenue of around 300 million USD, and many of them exporting their software services or other products to abroad, to United States, to Singapore. Besides tech companies, we accommodate also a lot of other spaces like Transformer Space. It's a space for performing arts. We have Amirkhan Space is located in SmArt.Point. It's a space for, like, they have a makerspace, fabrication lab. They have a lot of content, a lot of programs for entrepreneurs, students, young people. Even city mayor's office is located in SmArt.Point. He's not sitting there, but his front office is located in SmArt.Point. So we have a lot of other spaces supporting our ecosystem. And we are opening our second SmArt.Point in Western Kazakhstan, in Aktau city.
Well, thanks for nice introductions. My next questions will be more targeted, probably. Pamela. Pamela's background, she was born in Belfast, so origin in the times of bombings, all the things where the poverty was the reason of many kind of clashes and social issues. And my question relates to how do you, in the perspective of creative industries, what kind of activities you undertake in order to involve all layers of society, let's say, so that creative industry shouldn't be something like on a high fashion or, like music, but kind of like all underserved groups of society reached properly. And Rachel, and what would be your background from Scotland on this issue?
I guess the overarching thing is you need to talk to the young people. When Urban Development started, it was actually an artist collective, and they were hip-hop artists. So they wanted to design the kind of education program that they would have liked to have had themselves as young people. So there was a strong connection between artists and young people. 20 years on, the program that we run, I guess we've understood to be sustainable, we have to embed ourselves in the system. So we start with working in schools. So in the UK, music education still is primarily classical music on the whole. Not everywhere, but on the whole it is. Which means there are, especially in inner city London, many young people who are not accessing the music education they're entitled to. So we're trying to suggest an alternative offer. So it's based on the more sort of commercial, urban forms of music. Most of the children, young people, actually want that music, really. I'm not saying it's mutually exclusive, but we are engaging with them on their terms. We figure that everyone is in school. So you can find young people because they have to be in school. So it's offering an innovative program while they're a sort of fixed audience, and then connecting with those with high potential. I mean, we have to filter. We do have to work with the most talented or the ones with high potential. They're just ordinary working class children. They haven't been given private instrumental tuition by parents, but we take them on a journey of confidence building and making them believe that this industry could be for them, in whatever that means. So it could be artists, but that's hard. But it could also be, all the wider jobs within music, engineering, managers, publishers. And fundamentally, we're tapping into an appetite of the music industry to connect with young people and diverse young people. So we're seeing movements where major record labels want to employ ordinary, diverse, working class young people, and we're trying to make the connection between both.
Excuse me, I grew up in an area in Scotland, in Edinburgh, called Leith, and in it would be considered an area of poverty where I grew up. So I'm very well versed in talking and engaging around how do we attract young people from different social backgrounds into the arts and creativity in order to have an impact on their lives. And there's probably three things for me at play there. The first thing, and the room knows exactly this, I'm singing to the choir here, as they say, is that tools required for life in any society can be attributed to your learning and creativity. So if you're from an economic background or in poverty or lack education or have a particular upbringing, creativity can be an outlet for you, and your behaviour can be changed, it can be challenged, it can be nourished, it can be expanded. And I think we would all agree that using the arts and creativity as a tool for social change is a good thing, and it happens. There's another layer to that, though, is then how do you start to engage people in thinking that they have self-worth? And I come from a lot of, I've worked in a lot of different communities and in a lot of different areas where the young people lack hope. They have the skills, they have the talents, they have the attributes, but they don't know it yet. They haven't seen their own potential yet, and they lack hope because they don't know what they don't know. And that's another area of where this type of new economy we're talking about has endless possibilities for society as a whole, because for the first time you could truly include everybody in a new system. And then the third thing is, how do we actually start to develop and change areas, cities, rural, urban environments through creativity and culture and young people and social interaction. So I've been involved in a lot of interest in regeneration projects where the area wants to develop, new businesses want to develop, new communities spring up, and the way that you do that well is that you engage young people in social interactions that are driven by creative activities. And this is the thing that's often overlooked as an extra or a nice to have. But actually it's quite fundamental in building up strong, resilient communities. If people can express themselves and be listened to and taken seriously when they express themselves, then that community becomes more stable. And I think what's interesting is how you equate that then. If I look at my other life, which is supporting creative industries in a business context, that isn't as far away from each other as you might think it is. Because the young people that Pamela are talking about are going to be building the new businesses and the new jobs and the new opportunities of the future. Because we're in a new wave of portfolio careers. We're in a new wave where systems break down. Businesses are not going to be 1, 2, 3, 10, 100 people. They're going to be, businesses of the future are going to be 10 businesses collaborating together as one business. So I think there's something really interesting in linking up young people's opportunities from a social economic perspective to what we want to create as a new economic future.
All right. Just one clarifying question. One of the top search keywords how Creative Enterprise Scotland Fund is funding for performing arts. Do you provide funding for performing arts for Scotland?
Well, first, we don't provide any funding.
Yeah,
no,
but this is top search result.
Yeah.
How about the urban development?
Yeah.
I think probably a mixed model is useful. We have funding as appropriate. So we have funding from the education system for education, and we have funding from the Arts Council for talent development. I think I find it useful to think of funding as working capital. How can you leverage the funding to bring other money in? So we've tapped into a scheme of corporate sponsorship, corporate social responsibility financing, but also commercial investment. So I think a mixed model as appropriate for the work you do, I would say.
All right. So my next question relates to my guest from Central Asia. Like fostering entrepreneurship and innovation requires engaging all stakeholders into community, not only specifically government or the customers. I was wondering how your organizations on the national level, on the ground level, kind of facilitate this process, and who are those stakeholders who are involved in?
Thank you very much for the question. There are two major obstacles, as I see, for involving all of those, as you mentioned, different layers of the society. First is education, and the second is ability to think out of the box or to act. Education is important, and our organization, for example, we do work with universities to change their curriculums, to introduce new subjects in relation to the field, to the creative industry. We do provide, for this year we provided grants only for the local universities. For the next year we plan to provide grants for scholarships for foreign universities as well in the field, and scholarships for PhD students, and scholarships, grants for programs within this sector. And regarding this so-called thinking out of the box and ability to think out of the box, it is quite important for our society, I believe. We lack it, unfortunately, and the important part here is to inform people that you can do something in a different way. Show them that you can do it, and it is possible. Like, as I mentioned before, we have this experimental program with the museums. No one would think of changing museums in such a way. But we need to show them and give example so that it is possible. Do it, think about it. And another way is helping them is to provide the place, provide the space to be able to work there. As I said before as well, we're creating this hub, the cultural hub, which will be free for all the participants, for students. And I believe this is quite important as well. We're creating one in Tashkent only for now, and we plan to have it in different regions in the country. I believe this should have quite good effect, taking into account that it will allow people to work in the space. So thank you. I see you're showing the time.
No, it's okay. It's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. In Kazakhstan, due to a lot of oil money in the economy, there are a lot of players, ecosystem players. So for us, for SmArt.Point, we do not focus on engaging all ecosystem players. We focus on engaging the players that fit to our strategy, where we see a synergy. We have, as a partners, we have US consulate, we have a city administration, we have National Agency for Technological Development, we have some other players or ecosystem elements, components, and our focus is tech. So, now, like, we don't see like any practical use of engaging all parties, all tech players in Kazakhstan. So, like, since I'm representing business, our focus is like to make the space, as Daniel said, to make the space profitable, and at the same time to help our tenants or our residents to grow their businesses. So when we see that we have one player is not engaging with us, we communicate, we invite them, and since SmArt.Point is a kind of one of its kind, I mean, it's the biggest co-working space, so it's very popular. That's why like we have no problem with engaging parties. I mean, everyone wants to be. Including investors, including government agencies, including private companies, I don't know, including international organizations. We have a lot of joint programs with a lot of international organizations. It may be like business institutions like European Bank of Reconstruction, or it may be British Council. We had a meeting, a week ago, we had a joint session with British Chamber of Commerce, for example. We were discussing new technologies in real estate. So we are open, and I mean, we are lucky to be interesting as a partner for others.
All right. So since new economy or new culture starts with tightly related to technology development, technological innovation, is worth mentioning some trends that are happening in our region. I represent KG Labs as a public foundation to aim to boost entrepreneurship in Kyrgyz Republic, and we have, let's say, growing YouTube economy is when a group of content creators making cartoons for kids for English-speaking audience. So apart from UK and the United States, there are three sources of those cartoons in the world. That's India, Vietnam, and Kyrgyzstan. Which is surprising, and it's a really fast-growing economy that require new skills like lighting, like animation, and all kind of related. It has like a huge multiplier to the economy and driving demand for new skills. In this regard, my question relates to our guests: how technology impacts, or how do you kind of use technology in order to develop creative industries, or what kind of programs have you initiated in this regard? All of you.
For us, the most relevant thing is connections. We are in the process of creating a hub, first talent centre for urban culture in East London near the Olympic Park. It's part of a legacy project. And our plan, I mean, the young people we work with are already very, very, very tech savvy, you know, and the A&R mechanism of the music industry is based on who's acquired the most reach. So they probably could teach me, frankly. But the intention, just as an example, in this new centre is to combine the art forms. So we will work with a dance provider, but we'll also have a digital partner who will deliver, you know, content. We'll work with SBTV and Link Up TV, who are already very large YouTube platforms. So yes, sorry, that's just a little example of what we do.
I think one of the things about technology is that its impacts on every sector and every part of society. So often in the creative and cultural space, tech seems to be, as a tool, creative and cultural industries are at the forefront of using that tool, but the rest of the sectors play catch up in a lot of ways. So I think there's two areas that are of interest. How do you use your creativity and your ability to think differently within the technical space to bring other sectors along with you? And then also, what are you trying to achieve within that creative and cultural space? I think sometimes we get too obsessed with focusing in on the digital or tech, and actually it's another tool, it's another enabler. It's like working capital. You have to use it for what it is, to enable other things to happen. It doesn't replace or displace. It's my controversial point.
Technology. We create a platform for everyone. No, well, kidding. First of all, we use technology to fight corruption. We found it quite interesting way to use blockchain for licensing process of singers, then for ticketing process as well. And I believe that's quite important for us. Then I believe technology should be used to attract young generation to museums and theaters. That's quite important as well, because that's what attracts the generation. And we need to use technology more in this kind of way, so that we can attract more attention to our... Closer? Okay. Can you hear now? Shall I repeat everything? Well, so yeah, as I said, technology, first of all, we use it to try to fight the corruption with the blockchain in a ticketing system, and attract young generation to museums and theaters. Those are two main points that we use the technology for.
So, as I mentioned before, tech is our focus. So, for example, co-working is a intersection between real estate and tech, for example. So, tech helps us to find new business models. Actually, I can say that as a tech company or as a real estate or property tech company, we use art and culture to find new perspectives for business. I mean, for us, it's the main issue is how to use arts and culture, how to incorporate all arts and culture to our business in order to create a creative space, because we are quite good with tech.
All right. So my last question relates to, since we are here to collaborate, to foster communicate a dialogue between United Kingdom and Central Asia, I was wondering what kind of lessons UK could learn from Central Asian creative industries and its history, and what Central Asia could learn from UK experience that we could make effective and take into consider.
What I've learned today, and I'd like to follow up, is I've been very inspired by all the co-working models. As we move forward with planning our own smaller version, I definitely feel that it's a piece of the jigsaw puzzle that's very well developed from what I can see today. Can I flip the question back on you? What do you think you would like to learn?
From what kind of best practices might potentially be interesting to Central Asia to implement in the next year, let's say, and we could present to the next Astana Forum on Creative Central Asia, if it may help you.
I think one of the interesting things for me is that the pace of change here is rapid, much faster than it is in the UK, much faster. And I think that's a strength and also a concern, just in case. It's a strength because when you're in it and you have to think rapidly, lots of good things happen. And it's a concern because sometimes you just don't have the space to stop and think. And I think I would like to learn around the pace and data capture and understanding more about what are the areas of need and the areas of priority in that pace of change.
We definitely can take the policy-making process from the UK partners, and I'm not sure what UK partners can take, what kind of lessons they can take from us. That's a question to our British partners, I believe, our British colleagues. That's it.
SmArt.Point was designed by British man, William Stott, and our real estate company strategy was drafted by PriceWC UK office, so I'm kidding. Actually, I was inspired by the case of Shoreditch. As I remember, it's a district in London. So as I know, it was a very bad district. I mean, it was a kind of disaster. So then it was renovated, and now it's one of the prospering districts in London. This Shoreditch was one of the brightest examples and inspirations for us to create SmArt.Point. That's it. Thank you.
All right, then I probably will add up, since I recently been in United Kingdom with International Leaders Program. I've been into Sheffield, to the city which is origin of steel, and I've visited this called Advanced Manufacturing Research Center, which was really amazing. Good kind of a source for combining design, technology, and efforts of all stakeholders like Boeing, Rolls-Royce, and everybody in order to produce some kind of advanced intellectual property development innovation in order to share this innovation with all stakeholders involved. And this kind of lessons that we would love to learn and implement in Central Asia. This is kind of what I've learned to myself and consider as a priority where arts meet technology. So we are end of time. We're exactly on time. We are 1 minute. I would thank you all. Our participants who stayed awake after lunch, and our outstanding speakers for profound insights and findings that shared with us. And please share your grand applause to them. Thank you very much.